Thank you for being here, first of all, celebrating 60 years. Anybody excited about that in here? I like it. Yeah. That's the kind of energy we want to feel around here, right? Okay. Great things are happening all the time here at DHI. They started a long time ago and they're still going on. I'll go ahead and begin by introducing our visitors. And some of you already noticed their socks. You'll see why. This is Val Hell, president of the Provo-Orem Chamber of Commerce. John Curtis, mayor of Provo, Utah, right here. Those of you that are into social media and you live near here, I would ask you to follow him, follow his blog. You'll see pictures of his socks all the time, all the different places he goes, but he also has interesting news about the city of Provo and things that are going on in the community. I live in Provo, so I enjoy following him. And then we have Ken and Linda Crandall. And Beth and Lynn Crandall. Almost 20 years ago, it was 20 years ago in April, I was interviewed for a job at DHI Computing Service by a guy by the name of Lynn Loftmiller. Some of you know that guy. And then I had a second interview that day with a guy named Gary Allen. Now that all sounds, no big deal. But the interesting part of it was I had spent all night at the hospital and my second son was born at 2:30 in the morning that night. And I left the hospital about 7, went home, showered, got here at 8:30. Well, Lynn showed up for my interview at 8:30 at about 10 because he'd been working on some film things and they were sharing, he and Lene, they were both working on 2 different film projects and we only had one computer to do the work. So she was working during the day and he was working basically the graveyard on the same machine. So he was basically exhausted when he came in to meet me and I was exhausted meeting him, and so I think that's how I got hired. We were both too exhausted to I got in somehow. So I'm grateful for that. I just have to mention and thank Doral Keniston. If those of you that don't know, he serves on the volunteer fire department for Woodland Hills. He was the fire chief there for a while. So if you need fire hoses to fill your pool or something, call Doral. But we went and we got with Provo City and got a meter and turned on the hydrant out here. And he brought some hoses over. And we filled all these water barrels up in less than 15 minutes. And that thing, I was on this side and Doral's on that side. And I bet they could hear Doral in the building, because when he'd leave it on too long, Doral, it was like, because that water was cold and it came out strong, and when you left it on too long, it'd shoot out the top of the barrel. So we were drenched from here to here. But, about every couple minutes I hear this little Doral squeal. But I want to thank Doral for helping and doing that, but he's... Doral, he'll go to all lengths to do what you need to get done. Another congratulation I did 10 years ago as well, is I want to ask Beth and Lynn to stand up, please. What day is today?
Our anniversary.
Yeah. "54 years, right? I know. I watched the video from last time. It was 44, so I hope I got it right. And they gave the same kiss, but then she held him a little tighter, so I think... Oh, okay. She's probably nervous because we put her on the program this time, so... That took some talking, by the way. I wanted to let you know a little bit about Lynn Crandall, and just... You'll hear a little bit in a minute about DHI in general, but... An experience that I had it was less than a year after I started here, and I know many of you have had similar experiences with Bliss and with Lynn and with others in the company, because it's the way we do things. We were working really hard to come out with a product called Docs on CD, And it was a brand new thing. This is almost 20 years ago, CDs, and trying to figure out how to make it auto run so that you put it in, if you remember that, and it just start right up. And for some reason, we couldn't get the code just right to do exactly what we were trying it to do. And this sounds so simple to you programmers now, right? The way things are. But back then, it wasn't quite so simple. Sometimes it depended on what computer you put it in, too. But anyway, I had burned 12 CDs, and every one of them had a little problem or something or failed somehow, and I was starting to feel bad about the expense of these CDs. And I was getting off the elevator, and Lynn was getting on, and he asked me how it was going, and I told him what was happening, and I told him what was going on, and he said, well, when's the next one? I want to see it. You know, he just wanted to know, right now, let's go. And it was nothing about the expense of another CD or anything like that. It was that next hurdle to get over. Let's go, let's do it. That's just the kind of guy he is, the kind of people that work at DHI, and the kind of people that have been here as long as many of us have. I did a little research, and the really funny part of this research was I typed into Google, you know, you can just type things and sometimes you get interesting things, and I typed, how long do people stay in a job, to see if I got some statistics. Well, of course I get all these articles telling people, don't stay at your job over 4 years. That was the general statistic that it said. And I wanted to show our visitors how many of you in this room, this tent, have worked here over 15 years. Stand up, please. And how many over 10? So that's the kind of people that we keep around. People stay here because it becomes a home. And because we enjoy working together, we enjoy the people here, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that. Another thing about that is that the kind of people we have think greater things and try to do greater things, and that comes from our founder and the principles that we were based upon. We received a letter. We tried to get the governor to come. I guess we're not as important as Laura Bush. He came for her talk the other night, but and he declined and said he wasn't going to be able to fit it into his schedule, but he did send a letter, and Lynn has asked me to read this. And he said what the letter says, and it's addressed to Lynn. Dear Lynn, on behalf of the great state of Utah, it is my pleasure to extend sincere congratulations to DHI Computing Service Incorporated on 60 years of data processing and for being one of the oldest computer companies in Utah. The Beehive State is well known as a leader in technological innovation. I commend your years of leadership and involvement in the dairy, banking, financial, and medical industries amidst a constantly changing business environment. Over the years, your company has developed a reputation for innovation, dependability, and exceptional customer service in your chosen fields of specialization. While time has certainly brought changes to each of the industries you work in, your team has remained faithful to the conservative Utah values of hard work, honesty, and integrity. I commend you for staying true to what your founder, Bliss Crandall, envisioned when DHI began. I applaud the Crandall family, DHI Computing Service Incorporated, and its many employees for 6 decades of commitment to building strong relationships with its partners and customers. Your company is an example of why Utah is a great place to do business. I am confident you will enjoy continued growth and prosperity. Again, congratulations on this significant milestone. Please accept my best wishes for a memorable celebration and continued success in the future. Sincerely, Gary R. Herbert, Governor. I think that's pretty cool. Great people think great thoughts. Let's hear a few of those now.
I've always believed, back to my first days, that if you want to be successful in any kind of endeavor, you need to know the leaders in that field where the ideas are being born. When we applied for being included in the telephone directory, as a computing center, nobody knew where to put us. There weren't any. Nobody had ever had a computing center anywhere. We were the first one established between Chicago and San Francisco. We know how to convert data, vast amounts of data, into, number one, information that makes sense. Then we know how to change information into knowledge, knowledge into intelligence, and intelligence into wisdom. One's judgment is no better than his information. Other famous people have said that. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. When you're in a service industry, there's going to be mistakes occasionally that are made. And when those mistakes are made, you end up with a liability. And how you respond, and each of you as employees of DHI, we try to train you this way. How we respond when there is that liability, we can change that into an asset. When performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported, performance accelerates. What kind of relationship we had with our customers. Most of them we know on a personal basis, and we share in their success. We know how to process information and convert it into process data into information, information into knowledge, knowledge into intelligence, and intelligence into wisdom. That's been our goal at DHI, and I think we've been very successful in doing that. Appreciate your being here and sharing this with us today. Thank you very much.
I hope we all realize the tradition that we have here to uphold what DHI is, where it came from, and I hope we strive to work hard and make that continue on and on. We'd like to thank everybody again for being here. I want to especially acknowledge Brandon for doing the boatload of the work on that video that you just watched. I feel like it's a great testament to Bliss and to this company. And to Cordell and Randy, Lisa, everyone that helped in any way to make this possible, and to the Crandall family as well for making it possible. And I'll turn the time now over to Val Hale, Chamber President.
What a great opportunity to be with you today. This is really remarkable. I have to admit that DHI is a bit of a well-kept secret in our community. If it weren't for my good former neighbor, Debbie Hundley, back there. And Debbie, I've got to say, on that video, aside from the hairstyles that have changed over the years, you still look about as young as you did then. You folks have a remarkable history. You think about that, 1954. That was 3 years before satellites went up into space. And the technology that has happened and transformed this valley and this state really kind of began right here. There are 50,000 technology-related jobs in Utah Valley now, 50,000. And you think about this being most likely the very first one that started, and it's still going and going strong and setting standards. It's a remarkable thing, and I think a real tribute and just a testament to your owners and your leaders and people with vision and foresight. I love to see companies where employees stay for years and years, and just the fact that you do what you do, you don't make waves in the community. It's a wonderful company for a lot of reasons, and my hat's off to you. Wish we had literally hundreds more. And the other thing is, when you hear about a company that starts in the basement, we hear so many of those stories now. Companies that start in somebody's basement and grow and flourish and become just tremendous assets to our community. And that's the great entrepreneurial spirit that we have here in our state and in this valley and among people. So as I look into your eyes, folks, you have a lot to smile about and be happy about. And congratulations to you, to Mr. Crandall, to all of those in this family. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I'm so pleased to be with you today. As I listened to the remarks and thought about all of you, I reflected on a question that I'm asked all the time. And as Provo is gaining a lot of national prominence, I get phone calls from reporters all over the United States and emails. And in essence, they want to know, what is it that makes Provo great? And I have a moment when I tell them it's the mayor or these elected officials. See, I figure I get blamed for everything, so I might as well take credit for everything. But in reality, I wish I could transport them to this event today and help them. It's things like this that really make Provo great. I don't know if you fully appreciate how unusual it is to have a company that has endured 60 years and been successful for a 60-year period of time. There's just not a lot of companies that do that. Provo city government has done that, but we're a monopoly. And it's just not an easy thing to do. And I hope that you appreciate that. As a young man, I worked for a company up in Salt Lake that celebrated their 60th anniversary. It was the O.C. Tanner Company. It reminds me a lot of this company. And so many great things about this company. Not only the longevity, but the leadership. And I hope you appreciate how valuable it is to have owners and leadership who are interested in the company more than they are interested in the dollar. And I can just from a distance look at this company and know that those who could take advantage of this company have instead and plowed those dollars back into this company, invested in this company, and the company means so much. And that's a rare thing, to have an opportunity to work for a company like that. It's a rare thing to work for a company with this type of longevity. When you stand up with 15 years and 10 years, that's just a rare thing. The advantage that gives you to have those of you that have been here that long is really an amazing thing. So my congratulations to you. Thank you for being part of the Provo story, for making us great. It truly is people like you and companies like you that really make this city famous around the nation and around the world. Thank you and congratulations.
When Tom first asked me to speak, I said, no, absolutely not. And they said, well, why don't you think about it for a little bit? So I said, okay. So I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, this is a great opportunity for me to tell my side of the story. So I'm going to do it. I'll be careful not to have to be contradicted. But I'm probably the only employee here who has never really been hired. I never went through an interview. I never filled out an application, but I got a job. So that's how it happens. But when we were first married, I used to ask Lynn every night, how come you have to work so late? I would listen to TV, and I'd watch the Johnny Carson show, and then I'd watch a few other things. And then at 12 o'clock, TV would sign off, and the Tabernacle Choir would sing the first and the third verses of the Star-Spangled Banner. I can still sing them today. I've memorized them. I heard them so many nights. And then I'd turn the TV off, and Lynn would come home. And so I said, what can I do to help you? I'd like you to come home earlier. And so he started bringing me homework at midnight. I actually we didn't have a burster back then in the mailroom, so I burst the Provo City statements, and I balanced accounts, and lots of times he'd bring home things to be typed. I'd type a proposal for a customer. And then I'd go to bed, and it'd be right there on the table when he got up in the morning. He could take it back to work with him. I usually got up and fixed him breakfast. I just poured him some cereal. But I got him some breakfast. But, it worked out, so I had a little bit of work to do, and I felt like I was helping. But this was just occasional work and only part-time, and I didn't get paid a dime for it. Might mention that. Of course, it wouldn't be worth much now. But one day, our youngest son was in kindergarten, and I was home, and he called me. Lynn called me from work, and he said, my secretary didn't show up for work today. Could you come in and just get the deposit to the bank and just do a couple of things that she hadn't done? And so I said, okay, I can come in. I've been here ever since. But then I've been coming in every day. They finally found me a desk I could sit at and work. And Grandpa Bliss came in. He said, well, if you're coming in to work every day, we probably ought to pay you something. I said, okay, so I got on the payroll. That was great. I actually started doing the payroll, which is one of my biggest jobs right now, when Ken's wife, Linda, right here, had a lot of little children, and she couldn't do it anymore. So she came over and trained me. And that way we did it on punch cards. And we would actually get a time card from the employees that they had totaled each day. We'd send it to Terry's girls in the key punch department. They would punch it up and put the employee number, the date, and the hours, and then a little code in 80. And then we'd get all those and sort them down in date sequence, and then I'd merge a header card in front of them. Then I'd run them through the program and punch out an input sheet. How many of you remember the input sheet? Okay, we'd get an input sheet, and that would create a card that we could run the payroll from, get the checks and the payroll register and all the things that we needed to do. It was a lot of work, and it was cumbersome. And I don't know how many employees we had then. We tried to figure that out, but it wouldn't be near as many as we have now. It'd probably take me weeks to do the payroll if I had to do it that way now. It was a great day in my life when we went to cardless and went online. That was wonderful. It only takes me a day and a half or 2 days to do the payroll now, and I'd probably be still working on it, trying to get it out if we did it the old way. In fact, Dale Sandberg and his team were the ones that helped us get that payroll program going. And he told me, Beth, when you see this payroll program, it's going to be a piece of cake. And it is, Dale. It works great. Okay, we used to pay our accounts payable checks. This is really interesting. Mildred would get the bills from the vendors, and she would approve them, and then I would take them home at night, and I would type the checks on a typewriter, a 3-part check. And then I'd take them back to her in the morning, and she'd sign them, and she'd burst them and send the checks off to the customers that we owed money to. Oh, our accounts payable system is so much better now. Before I got married, though, I worked for Mountain Bell as a collections and a service rep. And so one of my very first assignments here was to be the collections agent. And so I got to call all the people who didn't pay their bills. And I had kept a log. We didn't have Excel spreadsheets back then. We just had a little log, and I wrote down their name and what they promised to pay. And I called them a lot. In fact, some of them were really good friends. I talked to them so often. But we didn't have to write off a lot of accounts. We got the money collected. They paid, and they were really grateful that they didn't owe us any more money. And when the business moved into this first complex, you saw that first little building out there that's just beautiful. We were so excited to move into that, but we didn't have a janitorial service. And so after we'd get through dinner, the families would all come back and we'd take out the garbage, we'd vacuum the floors, and we'd clean the bathrooms and do all those kind of things. And I was so grateful when they found a janitorial service and I could quit my part-time job. Well, I could go on and tell you so many things that have happened over the past 40 years, but I do appreciate the opportunity to work here, even though I wasn't hired. I really do enjoy working with the intelligent people we have here. Most of them are better than smart. They're like geniuses, and I feel very small in comparison, but I have a lot of good friends here, and they're also patient with me when I need help, and they come and bail me out lots of times, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity of associating with such good people. Thank you very much.
Now, I would be a little less than honest if I didn't tell you, over the last 50 years, there's one thing that really has me just a little bit miffed. And that is, you know, if you walk into my office, you don't see any of these honorary doctor's degrees, you don't see all of these presentations and these honors, you know, and you can see who got this one. You know, and that really does have me just a little bit upset. But you know what? Last night I had my opportunity. At the Angels game, they asked me if I would throw out the first pitch. And I was excited. Here was my chance of receiving an honor. And so, you know, I went down to the mound, and they had a young lady there that was to escort me out and show me where I was supposed to stand. They wouldn't let me stand right on the mound with my foot on the rubber. Things would have been quite a bit different. But anyway, I walked out to the appointed spot. The young lady stood off a little bit. I guess she was fearful of her life or something. She was standing off just a little bit, and I looked, you know, the announcer made this statement: "We direct your attention to the pitcher's mound for the honorary first pitch." And as we walked out there, and I stopped and I looked up into the crowd, there were 5,000 eyes just glued right on me. And I was excited. You know, this was my moment. And then the announcer went on and he said, "Our distinguished guest, Mr. Lynn Randall, will throw out the first pitch." I was just absolutely devastated. There it was gone. Nope, he misstated my name. Nobody would know who it was out there. You know, and so it was really deflating to see that. But I went ahead and I threw the first pitch. And then I did feel terrible. Until all of a sudden I remembered nobody knew who I was. It didn't matter if that pitch was high and away. You know, that didn't make a bit of difference. Nobody would know who that dummy on the mound was. So, you know, I felt a little better after that. But I really want to explain to you, because probably Tom gave it away, and so you know who it was out there. But it wasn't my fault. Because when I was standing there talking to this young man that was going to be the catcher, you know, I know a little bit about baseball. And I went up to him and I said, "Hey, what are the signs going to be today so I know what pitch you want me to throw?" This is a true story, by the way. And he looked back at me with a smile on his face, and it says, "It doesn't matter. I'll catch whatever you throw." And the young lady was right there and piped in, "Yeah, he's never missed one yet." You know? So I chose a high and away.
You know, as I was preparing for this, you know, I was going back through the history for 60 years, and that was the high point of my career. And so we had to play that today for that. Now, you know, Tom stood up here and he accused me of a pretty weak hug and a kiss. But I want to clear that up too. That wasn't my fault. Here's the real story. 1 minute after midnight, my wife woke me up and said, "Happy anniversary." You should have seen the hug and a kiss then. You know, it was a lot different. You know, with all the pressures of the day, it's awful easy to get bogged down, you know, and not remember all of the wonderful things that have taken place. So I really appreciate this opportunity. I would not be standing here if it wasn't for all of you. And I appreciate you and all you do for this company. Thank you so very much. I also want to tell our mayor and the president of our Chamber of Commerce how much I appreciate them for this community that we have to live in, because it is extremely very user-friendly. It's a business-friendly environment, and people do tell us all the time how lucky we are when they come in to see this. When I was standing there ready to go out on the mound and throw that pitch, I remembered as I was watching this thing, I had a chance to talk to the young man who was a professional baseball player who was going to catch that pitch. And as I was talking with him, I asked him where he was from and, you know, those kind of things. And he said he was from Miami, Florida. And I asked him, well, how do you like playing here in Utah? And he stopped, and almost with tears in his eyes, he said, when I walked into this stadium and saw the setting and those beautiful mountains and everything around here, I was just extremely excited. I love playing here, and I love this valley. We hear that from our clients all the time. So thank you for your kind words. And thank you for all you do to make this a great community to live in and do business. Well, let me take just a minute. It is not possible for me to go through 60 years of history and explain all of the exciting things, but let me just talk about just a few briefly here that we've accomplished and all of you have accomplished in each of the divisions these last several years and months. How many of you have ever heard of the Sierra Project? I hope every hand was up. Hey, wait a minute, we got to stop for just a second. I think in all fairness and honesty, I need to clear something up for you so that there's not a mistake made that'll cause you some severe pain and anguish. I'd like my oldest son, Brett Crandall, to stand up. Okay, and stay standing, Brett. Now, my second oldest son, Kyle Crandall, to stand up. You'll notice there's a major similarity there. Okay? They're mistaken all the time for each other. And that could be disastrous to you. So I want to clear up, because one of them's a dentist and the other one's a programmer. Well, you need to know who you're talking to, because you're going to get a lot different result. In fact, in Springville, a lot of times, Kyle has been asked so many times if he could have if they could make an appointment with him because they got a little tooth here that's hurting him or something like that. And so after a while explaining, you know, and going through the long process, no, that's my brother, he's the dentist and all of that, he just started saying, oh yeah, just come into my office and I'll give you a free root canal. You know, so you're going to want to make sure you're talking to the right one. We don't often have Brett, thanks guys, we don't often have Brett here, and so I just wanted to clear that up. Let's go back to Sierra. Not that there's pain and anguish that comes from Sierra, but there are opportunities now and again. You know, there are few companies in the world that could have done what these four young men did, putting together that, where they transformed host-based programs and allowed them to run on a server farm. What a major step that is in history. We appreciate them, and that puts us in a position now where we can move ahead in an orderly manner. Not possible to just rewrite all the programs at once and get there. So thank you for the great job that was done. In our finance division, we built a finance decision that is viewed in the industry that it is absolutely the best in the industry. We are viewed as the leader, and as we were selected to serve on the board of the association where all of the finance companies come together 2 or 3 times a year. And we are the ones that they propose. If you need a data processing system, go talk to Gold Point Systems in Provo, Utah. Our biggest challenge now is managing the growth. You're aware that last night they converted another big section of a company that doubled the size of that business. One of our largest clients in our industry processes over 20,000 loan applications a week on a busy week. We just signed a contract with another one that we're working on their conversion now that does 17,000 applications a day. So that's exciting, and our system does a good job with that. A few weeks ago, The owner of one of our largest companies, First Franklin back in Georgia, just stopped in on a surprise visit. He had his wife and his daughter, who is the president of the company now, and we sat there and talked with them for quite some time. It was almost embarrassing how pleased they were with us and all the work that our GPS Gold division has done for them. They went on and on telling us about how great a company we are and how much they appreciate that. In our dairy division, they have new products that are extremely popular in the agricultural industry. Easy Feed is touted as the best in the industry. It's valuable to the dairyman because he can recover the total cost of that system, that's an on-farm system, within just a couple of months. And it's selling extremely well. They're easy weights, where they have dairymen who can, and anyone can capture the loads of feed and everything that comes on and leaves the farm in just minutes. I'm told that there is one farm, I believe it's up in Idaho, that has a truck crossing the scales every 15 seconds. And that system handles that and gives them the information they need. The dairy division just recently created a mobile device system that again allows the dairyman, no matter where he is, to have right at his hands on his telephone, smartphone, all of the information so that he can make critical decisions about his dairy no matter where he's located. Again, very popular and being greatly received very well. Our banking division, major strides have been made there. Recently, they've just implemented a new customer service model that is helping us better serve our customers. We are on site to see firsthand how they're using our system and improvements that we need to make and things like that are really allowing us to home in and do a better job for our clients. We're receiving many compliments on the quality of our website. That has just been exciting to me because our name is getting out better. They've done a great job in getting the name out in the industry where we weren't known as well as we needed to be. And our website now is receiving compliments. We have anonymous people calling, telling us that. The internet department has a complete home banking product that includes a new mobile product that again allows people to conduct their finances no matter where they are. Exciting to the banks that we serve, because now when young people go in and they get established with that bank, it doesn't matter where they move to, they can still keep doing business with that same bank because of these mobile devices. The internet department has done a fantastic job of the FPS division. So major improvements have been made with consultants. We historically have not stacked up too high with some of the professional consultants. That is changing. We now have consultants that are on board with us. They know who we are, and they're starting to help us as we move forward. Our healthcare division has just accomplished the impossible. They built a state-of-the-art electronic health record for physicians. This, again, is viewed as the best in the industry. This past month, that group of 4 young men programmed and passed a stringent requirement of meaningful use, where we're now certified up to level 2, which is the last level that's there. This allows the doctors on our system to totally receive $44,000 incentive money from the government, a major step forward. I'm thankful for the parents that I had or have, and what a blessing it was to be born to them. They're wonderful parents. I wish I could share stories with you of the experience I've had right from the time I was just a little young man and the first job that they had for me to do. My dad was an agronomist and a statistician by profession. From that background, it prepared him well to start this company. I appreciate my wife and for her patience and help and support. As she's mentioned, often I would come home and she would type up a presentation for me that I needed the next day. Get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and do that. Without her support and help in picking up the load at home and here at work, it would have been impossible for me to accomplish what I did. I'd like to spend just a second on these quotes. You heard a little bit of them from my dad. I've heard them all my life. And I believe that a lot of you have too, because if you talked to him very long, you would have heard of them. Again, he talked about specification creep. and how important it is to get the facts and make sure you're working on what really needs to be done. You heard when performance is measured, performance improves. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Turning a liability into an asset, that's happened so many times. When we've had a problem, it actually turned out better that we had the problem because we had a stronger relationship with the client after we got in and fixed the problem and showed them that we cared. One's judgment is no better than his information. You must have balance in life and in anything. There's got to be a certain amount of stability and a certain amount of liability. If you're always changing things, you'll fail. And if you fail to change things, you'll fail. So there has to be a balance as we do these things. Then one from my mother that just sticks in the back of my mind because I heard it so many times. Lynn, you've got to hoe to the end of the row. When I was 7 and 8 years old, we had a garden that was about 15 times longer than this tent. When you're an 8-year-old boy and you look down there, and it didn't look like there was an end to those rows. But how important and how true that is, that we don't have any clients that are willing to pay us for a partial job. We need to hoe to the end of the row, and you have done that and done that and done that. He also said you need to be acquainted with the leaders in the field and be out where the ideas are being born. I know we try very hard to do this and follow through with those guidelines that he has set. It's hard to tell a complete history of the business in just 15 or 20 minutes. You saw in the video, the first one, the home that we lived in when my father started the business in the basement of our home. It was on 700 North and 600 East in Logan. I was 13 and Ken was 11. In high school, I wanted to be a farmer. I loved horses, tractors, and would come down and work on my granddad's farm. I talked my dad and brothers because I knew if you're going to be a farmer, you got to have land. I talked them into, when I was a senior in high school, buying 20 acres of land in Springville. Best investment I ever made, by the way. It was $300 an acre. But when I got into college, I realized with a few accounting classes, there was no way to amass the capital I needed to do that. I'm glad I stayed in this business. It's been an exciting business. Every day there's something new. Well, from that humble beginning of a small apartment in a basement, we've grown from 3 employees to 277 employees. Again, we've outgrown our facilities. And Mayor, we're going to be talking to you about a building permit. We're going to build some... Probably within the next week or two, we're going to build a whole new section for our communications department where there'll be a filming studio, silent rooms to do their editing in, a conference room, a couple of offices, and then some team rooms. We're excited about that. You can see the wonderful job and the way they take care of everything. Thank you very much for what you did here today, to all of you that were involved with that. Well, let me just share a couple of things. It's not always been rosy. There have been some tense moments. This business just about didn't get off the ground. When my father started this, he started tabulating the production records on all the cows in Utah. And the other states came around and wanted us to start doing them. At that time, the university up in Logan told my dad, this is no longer an experiment. This is a running business. You need to move it off campus. That's when they moved it to the basement of our home. Well, just a little while later, my dad was at a convention, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced that they'd decided that they were going to process these records for all the dairy cattle in the United States. My dad immediately got on the phone and called IBM and said, cancel the order. They responded back, I'm sorry, we can't do that. The equipment is already shipped. That's how close we were to not even getting out of the gate. There was a time when we almost lost the FPS division. It was the largest division at that time, and we had a number of savings and loans that we were processing. The process at that time was to have them gather together all of the deposits, withdrawals, and new accounts, last them up, send them down on the bus to us. We had young ladies that would sit there and enter all that information, and we'd run complete age trial balance reports with all of the transactions, showing them the amount of interest if they were going to pay it off tomorrow on loans and that type of thing. We sent that back every morning. Well, the technology, and throughout our history, we've been just crying for the new and the latest technologies. At that time, online became a reality. In 1970, it was in the first part of the 70s, and we were to a point we needed to move now so that they had teller machines on the teller lines, and they could enter all of that and get the answers back immediately. They could update the passbooks immediately, and they would put it in the passbook all on the right lines and everything. Well, we didn't have time to program all of that as fast as our savings and loans wanted us to. We had 5 savings and loans at that time: Deseret Federal, First Federal, American Savings and Loan, Home Federal Savings and Loan, and in Ogden First Savings and Loan. We were to the point that we had convinced them that this is the way we wanted to go. We'd put together performance statements, and we knew that we could make a switch, but we had to go out and buy another product. We didn't have time to develop it ourselves. So we had that all put together, and just before we were to meet with the presidents and get them to sign the agreement, they'd all agreed to it in principle. Prudential Federal Savings, a large competitor and a large savings and loan in Salt Lake at that time, came in and convinced the Ogden Savings and Loan and went ahead and signed a contract with them, knowing that that would destroy our ability to go ahead, because they all knew, they'd seen the performance, that we had to have all 5 companies to do it. Well, I hate to quit and give up on anything, but it looked pretty bleak right then. And so that night, I got thinking and working, and I found a way that we could make a few changes, and I think I could have convinced them of that. And I would, you know the end of this story. FPS is still here, so it's a good story. So don't be too worried about what I'm saying. But in any event, I knew they had a meeting scheduled with Prudential Federal Saving with all of the rest of the presidents to sign agreements with them the next morning at 8 o'clock, or Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And so as I thought about this, I needed the help of one of the savings and loans. We had a very dear friend that worked American Savings and Loan. He was the controller and the chief financial officer, and I knew he could help me swing it. The only problem was he had told me that he was going with his family down to Fish Lake, and I didn't have any way of contacting him. And so I thought, well, look in the phone book and see what you can find. There was no listing for Fred Smoka, but I looked and I found one for a fishing lodge that was down there. And I picked up the phone and I called the fishing lodge, and I said, is there by any chance a man by the name Fred Smoka there, or do you know him? He put his hand over the phone. I could still hear him a little bit, and he said, hey, is Fred Smoka in the building? And 2 or 3 minutes later, Fred Smoka came on the line, and I explained to him what my plan was. He said, Lynn, I think we can make it work, but we're going to have an early morning breakfast with all of these presidents before they go in to meet with the Prudential Federal Savings and hear their pitch. And so we did that, and we were successful. As you know, you're all sitting here. But the thing that was interesting is a little while later, Fred Smoka told me, I have never been in that lodge in all the times that I've been down to Fish Lake. That 10 minutes when I went in to buy some fishing lures was the only time I had been in that lodge. In 1966, we've got just a few more minutes. In 1966, IBM was to the point they were going to back up their machines and pick up all of our equipment because we couldn't pay our bills. IBM had a policy at that time. Computers had come into existence. We had an IBM 1401 computer. But what they did is they would allow you for the standard lease rate to pay or to have 174 hours that you could use it. There was a meter on the machine. If you used it any longer than that, you had to pay overtime charges, and they were excessive. And it really hurt us. And so we got to a point that we were 90 days behind in paying our bills. And that it looked really, really, really bleak. So we put together some performance statements. We made some changes, and I knew that we could turn that around in 6 months. We went to our banker, and he said, yes, I know that you can do that. I have confidence in you. But let's talk to the SBA. Now, the SBA were making all kinds of crazy loans with things, so I thought that'll be a slam dunk. They turned us down. They turned us down completely. And for 2 days, it looked pretty bleak. And then the president of the company called us and said, you know, I have confidence you can do what you say you're going to do. We're going to go ahead and loan you the money ourselves. And so they did, and we turned it around in 3 months. I knew we could do it. You know, we moved away from IBM. We stopped using the latest technology that they had. We went back one level and bought great big machines back a level so that we could get all of our work done. We went away from IBM disk drives to some Calcomp disk drives, and we were successful in turning that around. I'd like to share one more with you, but there's not time to do that. But let me just tell you, I know that there's been divine intervention many times in this business that have helped us to get to where we are today. And I appreciate that, because we wouldn't have been here without that help. The nature of the business, we solve problems. A lot of times it's easy to forget the fantastic things that we've done in the past. I'm asked a lot, how can a little company your size compete with these great big companies out of the industry that have billion-dollar budgets to do what you do? Again, it's because of all of you and the workforce that we have. What a wonderful place we have to live and attract employees and keep employees, and we have a long longevity. We have 4 divisions. We're diversified. When one division is struggling, the other divisions have always been there to pick up the load and help us. We're a debt-free company. We have strong reserves. From that experience that we had in 1966, we made the decision we are never again going to be in debt. And so for the last 30 years, including the buildings and everything, we are completely debt-free. We do have some loans, but our reserves way exceed those. That's another reason that we have been able to weather some of the storms that have come in. We're not a public company, so we don't have to please a lot of uninvolved stockholders. We can concentrate on just our employees, pleasing them, and our clients. We have a long tenure with employees. Employees have been very loyal and stayed with us, and we haven't had to have the constant turnover and training that other companies have had. We've basically had no layoffs in the last 60 years, and we want to continue that. Appreciate all your efforts on that line. One of the things that's nice, too, that a lot of people don't realize is our revenue is high-quality, recurring revenue. In other words, it comes in month after month after month, and it's protected with long-term contracts, 3 to 10-year contracts. So we know that revenue's coming, and we can make long-range decisions knowing that we can base it on that revenue. What a wonderful thing that is. Another thing that we can be proud of is in 60 years, we've never been involved in a lawsuit. We've had one situation that went to arbitration, not at our choosing, at a client's choosing, and it ended with us receiving a large settlement. So we haven't had to fight an awful lot of things like that. It also tells what kind of work you do with our clients, because they like you and they like what you've done, and it doesn't get to that. Okay, just a couple more things, and then we'll get you. I know the dinner's ready and so on. Historically, we have maintained and sustained manageable growth. 30 years ago, our gross revenue was $4,579,000. In 2013, 30 years later, it was $36,369,000. That's an average growth rate of 23% annually, unheard of. Now, obviously, as you get bigger, it's harder to keep the percentage, and so that was an average. You know, lately it's been around 7%. I'm excited about the future and where this company is how we are positioned and where we're going. I know that within the next 4 years we can double the size of this company. I wish that we had time and we could sit down and I could go through and explain a lot of things, but I would like to take just a minute and have those people that have been here 30 years and longer stand. But I'm going to call you by name. Mike Graves, 30 years. Please stand and remain standing. Jeff Collinsworth, 30 years. Melissa Gren, 30 years. Stephen Smith, 30 years. Doug Carpenter, 30 years. Brent Scholberg, 30 years. Val Thurston, 31 years. Doug Brown, 31 years. Logan Nillison, 31 years. Stephen Packer, 31 years. Jay McNamara, 31 years. Ken Barnes, 32 years. Neil Thompson, 33 years. Gloria Kimball, 34 years. Deborah Hundley, 35 years. Bob Chesworth, 35 years. Walt Whitaker, 36 years. Steve Carter, 36 years. Lee Day, 37 years. Gil Porter, 37 years. Dirk Baum, 38 years. Doral Kinniston, 38 years. Leslie Brost, 39 years. Dale Sandberg, 40 years. Julie Knuckles, 42 years. Dave Robinson, 43 years. And Terry Zembrennan, 44 years. You know, I hope that we haven't missed anyone there, but wow, what you've done for this company. I wish I could tell the experiences that I've had with every one of you over the last 44 years. It's been a mission. Would the rest of you please stand? Mayor Curtis and Brother Hay, I present to you the most fantastic, talented group of data processing professionals anywhere in the world. Thank you. Thank you for all you've done to make this happen. You're wonderful.
Let's give Lynn and Beth and Ken a hand. Crandall family.